It wasn't too long ago the Miami Heat were considered to be the team to be feared, the team to beat in the Eastern Conference as they sat in the number one seed with a few game cushion. But now with only a couple weeks away from the beginning of the playoffs, only a half game ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks, many fans of teams at the bottom of the Eastern Conference would rather see Miami over anyone else. So let's talk about what's changed and why the Miami Heat could crash out early in the 2022 NBA playoffs. The Miami Heat certainly have not been as successful as of late, specifically in the month of March. I have three concerns about this team, most specifically, two of which are a bit more minor, but one major concern for them, specifically for how they will fare in the playoffs. And this is not a concern I thought I would have about this Miami Heat team, but it's their defense. Not that it's bad. Miami Heat's defense is still good, but when you look at this roster and you see Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, PJ Tucker, the expectation would have been that Miami were going to be a top 3, top 5 defensive team, which they have been for a significant portion of the season, but they haven't been anywhere near that as of late on a consistent level. Now, I believe on the month they're still about top 10 in defensive rating, but consistently they have had some off nights where they just don't look locked in defensively, which I would hope and I would assume will be better come playoff time. But the fact that we are seeing that less than a month away from the playoffs is not overly reassuring from a team that has the Miami Heat culture, Jimmy Butler-led teams that should be high intensity defensively. We haven't seen that as consistently as we would like to see it over the last month from a team that has ambitions to be an NBA title contender. Part of the reason for their defense not being quite as good as anticipated is a high number of turnovers from the Miami Heat. And that's my second concern from this group. They are last in the league in turnovers, or first. They have a lot of turnovers. And this is not some Golden State run offense where it's a lot of really good ball movement and some difficult passes that get made from guys like Steph and Draymond to try and create offense. That's not how Miami's offense works. It's just not. They don't have those types of guys on this team. Miami are the only team in the league that have 4 players that all have over 2 turnovers per game. Not something you want to be leading the league in. And it's not something I would expect Miami to lead in either. Bam Adebayo, his ball handling, ball security, and passing has not been as good this year. But point being, they're first in the league in turnovers. It's not ideal. It's definitely not ideal. And it's not helping their defense. Defenses are best when they're set. If you're leading the league in turnovers, that's just a lot of possessions. Your defense is not set, and you're just giving up easy buckets. But there's one glaring problem with this Miami Heat team. One that is much more influential and impactful than anything previously mentioned, and one that is less likely to rectify itself or improve itself once the playoffs come around. And that's the Miami Heat offense. Specifically, their half-court offense once the playoffs come and games slow down and they need clutch buckets, and half-court offense is more typical, but even just in general, their offense is not that great. The Miami Heat are not even a top half offense by offensive rating. This is not a good offensive team, period. They're just not. You would think that this would at least be a top 15 offense, but they haven't been on the year. Kyle Lowry has had arguably his worst offensive season in a very long time, since he's been in Toronto at the very least. Jimmy Butler has completely forgotten to shoot threes over the last couple of years, and that hasn't changed this year. Tyler Herro's been great. Bam Adebayo's been fine. But that in and of itself is not really enough to propel you to some elite level offense. They've had some fine production from some bench guys, but nothing crazy. Oladipo hasn't been great since he's returned from injury, which isn't necessarily to any fault of his own. But at the end of the day, it's not helping this Miami offense. And that's not to mention the fact that this Miami Heat offense is best when they get to play in transition, which happens a lot less in the playoffs. When there's less turnovers, teams are better, teams are smarter, the game slows down. There's more isolation possessions. This team is not a good half-court offense. It's just not. They don't have good isolation scores comparative to the majority of the rest of the Eastern Conference. When you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, you could make the argument that the Miami Heat have the worst closers of any team in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Giannis and Middleton for the Bucks are both better than anyone on Miami as far as closing games. Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Joel Embiid and Joel Harden for the 76ers, DeRozan or Zach LaVine even, you could argue, for the Chicago Bulls. For the Raptors, based on how Siakam's been playing lately, definitely Pascal Siakam. For the Nets, KD and Kyrie Irving. For the Cavs, Darius Garland. That one's a little bit more arguable, but I'd say at the very least, 6 of the 7 other teams in the Eastern Conference playoffs have better scores from an isolation standpoint and a closeout standpoint than the Miami Heat do. That's not good. That's not good. You need that level of scoring. You need that level of production and that level of bucket getting come playoff time. You just do. You need someone who can get you a bucket to break a slump. You need a guy who can get you a bucket late in the game to take a lead. You need a guy who can get you a bucket when you're on the road to change momentum and get the fans out of it. Those things are important to an astounding degree in the playoffs. And the Miami Heat just don't have that. Tyler Hero, as your likely best scorer and closer in those types of situations, is fine. Hero's a good player, but he's not, I'm going to lead us offensively down the clutch to an NBA title good. He's just not. Could he be there eventually? Maybe. I mean, he's only in year 3, but he sure as hell ain't there yet, and that's no knock on Tyler Hero. But you ain't KD, Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum, Giannis, Chris Middleton levels. You just ain't. There's levels to winning an NBA title. Now, of course, the rebuttal to my argument is that Jimmy Butler has led his team to a finals appearance before, which is true. And Tyler Hero is much better than he was in the bubble. Jimmy Butler isn't getting you an ISO bucket from deep. He just isn't. He's not that quality a player from deep anymore. He might be able to hit them on a rarity, but it sure as hell ain't going to be consistent, and I definitely don't want to rely on that as a fan of the Miami Heat. I'd love to be proven wrong, but it doesn't really look like that's in Jimmy Butler's repertoire anymore. It doesn't really look like Jimmy Butler is anywhere near his offensive prime anymore, and it looks like Tyler Hero is going to have to be the guy to lead them on offense. Let me know down in the comments if you disagree, but Hero looks like the guy for this offense. Which again, Hero's fine, but he's not. I'm going to lead us to a deep playoff run type of an isolation score. And none of this is to give any slack or to shit on Jimmy Butler. That's just simply to say Jimmy Butler was fucking insane in the bubble. Like, he reached heights that were absolutely absurd. He led and in some ways carried that team. Not to say that the rest of the Miami Heat team didn't perform well, but offensively, he was absurd. That's arguably the best offense we have seen Jimmy Butler play throughout his NBA career, and he did it while playing significant minutes, while playing elite defense against the best competition in the league, night in, night out, in a bubble. It was wild. It was absolutely wild performances from Jimmy Butler. But I don't know that we're ever going to see that again. I really don't. Specifically not the three-point shooting. And so this Miami Heat team is a great regular season team. There's no doubt about it. They're a quite good defensive team that hopefully can pick it up a little bit more on that in the playoffs. But they're good enough offense to get them through to being a top team in the regular season. But when things slow down, when half-court offense becomes more important and more of a regular occurrence, when they need clutch buckets and isolation buckets down the stretch, they may actually be one of the worst, if not the worst, in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Depending on their matchup, I would not be shocked to see a first-round exit. But a second-round appearance is probably the best I expect to see from a Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero-led Miami Heat roster. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section on the Miami Heat heading into the playoffs, and I'll be back tomorrow for a video on the Phoenix Suns. Peace.